With a wistful eye, the Count approached the windows at the suite's northwest corner. How many hours had he spent before them? How many mornings, dressed in his robe, with his coffee in hand, had he observed the new arrivals from St. Petersburg disembarking from their cabs, worn and weary from the overnight train? On how many winter eves had he watched the snow slowly descending as some lone silhouette, stocky and short, passed under a street lamp? At that very instant, at the square's northern extreme, a young Red Army officer rushed up the steps of the Bolshoi, having missed the first half-hour of the evening's performance. The Count smiled to remember his own youthful preference for arriving entr'acte. Having insisted at the English club that he could only stay for one more drink, he stayed for 3. Then, leaping into the waiting carriage, he'd flash across the city, vault the fabled steps, and like this young fellow, slip through the golden doors. As the ballerinas danced gracefully across the stage, the Count would be whispering his excusez-mois, making his way to his usual seat in the 20th row with its privileged view of the ladies in the loges. Arriving late, thought the Count with a sigh. What a delicacy of youth! Then he turned on his heels and began to walk his rooms. First, he admired the salon's grand dimensions and its 2 chandeliers. He admired the painted panels of the little dining room and the elaborate brass mechanics that allowed one to secure the double doors of the bedroom. In short, he reviewed the interior much as would a potential buyer who was seeing the rooms for the very first time. Once in the bedroom, the Count paused before the marble-topped table on which lay an assortment of curios. From among them, he picked up a pair of scissors that had been prized by his sister. Fashioned in the shape of an egret, with the long silver blades representing the bird's beak and the small golden screw at the pivot representing its eye, the scissors were so delicate he could barely fit his thumb and finger through the rings. Looking from one end of the apartment to the other, the Count took a quick inventory of all that would be left behind. What personal possessions, furnishings, and objets d'art he had brought to this suite 4 years before were already the product of a great winnowing. For when word had reached the Count of the Tsar's execution, he had set out from Paris at once. Over 20 days he had made his way across 6 nations and skirted 8 battalions fighting under 5 different flags, finally arriving at Idle Hour on the 7th of August 1918, with nothing but a rucksack on his back. Though he found the countryside on the verge of upheaval and the household in a state of distress, his grandmother, the Countess, was characteristically composed. "Sasha," she said, without rising from her chair, "how good of you to come. You must be famished. Join me for tea." When he explained the necessity of her leaving the country and described the arrangements he had made for her passage, the Countess understood that there was no alternative. She understood that although every servant in her employ was ready to accompany her, she must travel with 2. She also understood why her grandson and only heir, whom she had raised from the age of 10, would not be coming with her. When the Count was just 7, he was defeated so soundly by a neighbouring boy in a game of draughts that, apparently, a tear was shed, a curse was uttered, and the game pieces were scattered across the floor. This lack of sportsmanship led to a stiff reprimand from the Count's father and a trip to bed without supper. But as the young Count was gripping his blanket in misery, he was visited by his grandmother. Taking a seat at the foot of the bed, the Countess expressed a measure of sympathy. "There is nothing pleasant to be said about losing," she began, "and the Obolensky boy is a pill. But Sasha, my dear, why on earth would you give him the satisfaction?" It was in this spirit that he and his grandmother parted without tears on the docks of Peterhof. Then the Count returned to the family estate in order to administer its shuttering. In quick succession came the sweeping of chimneys, the clearing of pantries, and the shrouding of furniture. It was just as if the family were returning to St. Petersburg for the season, except that the dogs were released from their kennels, the horses from their stables, and the servants from their duties. Then, having filled a single wagon with some of the finest of the Rostovs' furniture, the Count bolted the doors and set out for Moscow. "'Tis a funny thing," reflected the Count as he stood ready to abandon his suite. "From the earliest age, we must learn to say goodbye to friends and family. We see our parents and siblings off at the station. We visit cousins, attend schools, join the regiment. We marry or travel abroad. It is part of the human experience that we are constantly gripping a good fellow by the shoulders and wishing him well, taking comfort from the notion that we will hear word of him soon enough. But experience is less likely to teach us how to bid our dearest possessions adieu. And if it were to, we wouldn't welcome the education, for eventually we come to hold our dearest possessions more closely than we hold our friends. We carry them from place to place, often at considerable expense and inconvenience. We dust and polish their surfaces and reprimand children for playing too roughly in their vicinity, all the while allowing memories to invest them with greater and greater importance. This armoire, we are prone to recall, is the very one in which we hid as a boy. And it was these silver candelabra that lined our table on Christmas Eve. And it was with this handkerchief that she once dried her tears, etc., etc., until we imagined that these carefully preserved possessions might give us genuine solace in the face of a lost companion. But, of course, a thing is just a thing. And so, slipping his sister's scissors into his pocket, the Count looked once more at what heirlooms remained, and then expunged them from his heartache forever.